can murder a liberator, but you can't murder liberation. You can murder a revolutionary, but you can't murder revolution. And you can murder a freedom fighter, but you can't murder freedom.
You're tapped in. Let's get to it. As of May 2026, this guy, Pete Hegseth, okay, who serves as the United States Secretary of War, that took place, or he was confirmed back in January 2025. But since he's been facing intense scrutiny from a merit-based overhaul of the military leadership that has involved firing senior leadership, blocking promotions, many of which are being labeled as racism or racist, being denied the promotions based on the color of one's skin, okay? And for attacking wokeness. Critics characterize his actions as chaotic, misogynistic, and damaging to morale, while he describes his actions as liberating warriors from political correctness. All right, here's a breakdown of the situation in regards to Secretary Hegseth firing and removal, for instance, of military personnel. Hegseth has led a major purge of senior military staff. He removed high-ranking officers, including the firing of Army Chief of Staff General Randy George. At his request, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General C.Q. Brown, was fired, and Admiral Lisa Franchetti was removed as Chief of Naval Operations. Hegseth has blocked the promotions of 4 Army officers, two black and 2 female, all right, leading to allegations of racist and misogynistic motivations. Warfighter focus and rhetoric. Hegseth asserts that he is removing personnel to eliminate DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, and to refocus the military on warrior ethos, all right? He has told generals that if they do not agree with his approach, they should resign. And we've seen a lot of that, those resignations being handed over to Hegseth and Trump. A lot of people think that those were all coerced and forced resignations also. Controversial statements and leadership style. Now, Pete Hegseth, he has stated that women should not be in combat roles. A lot of people disagree with that, as well. A lot of people should, because they're women, they should not be excluded from a role that carries that much responsibility, and skill. A lot of them are very responsible and very skilled at what they do. So, a lot of us think that was some chauvinistic stuff or some misogynistic, stuff going on with Pete. But he has referred also to the removal of personnel as Liberation Day for troops. Critics describe him as having a junior officer's mentality, focusing on issues like facial hair policy and micromanaging Pentagon access. Internal and external backlash? Well, former Defense Secretary Leon Panetta described Hegseth as cheerleading rather than leading and questioned his qualifications. And so that's the thing, is he qualified? Is he qualified for that position, Secretary of War? Is he qualified? Not only that, but is he even credible? You want to ask yourself these things about old Pete. Pete seemed to be out of his league, but other than that, questioning his qualifications, there is internal sentiment, that is described as disarray and panic, with concerns that seasoned leaders are being forced out. And there's that, we think that coercion to rid the military of certain individuals that they don't want there, certain individuals who would question, orders that aren't ethical or moral, So that's the reason we think that occurred. But there are fears that his my way or the highway approach to senior leadership will cause a wave of resignations, and we've seen that also. But allegations of unauthorized action reports emerged in April 2026, alleging that Hegseth authorized a follow-up strike in Venezuela, described by some legal experts as a textbook war crime. So there is talk of war crimes, for him and Donald Trump, actually, and there should very well be. What took place in Venezuela, that is shocking that they were able to get away with that and no one said nothing or batted an eye. They literally went over there and kidnapped the leader of a sovereign nation just to acquire that nation's resources. Made up some things, some narrative, some propaganda about that leader being a narco trafficker, and come to find out that was all crap as well. But yeah, that's Pete Hegseth, all right? Hegseth has defended these actions as necessary, arguing that the previous leadership was promoting individuals based on quotas rather than merit. And I guess Pete would say there's merit in his hiring as the Secretary of War. There are a lot of professionals who were in that position, secretaries of defense, and they say no dice, no how, no way to Pete. Pete is what a lot of them call an armchair military type guy, But to give us some more context, I do have a clip. I want to drop this clip in. Let's hear what this this individual is saying. This is Pete, though. He's being questioned by Congress. So let's see how this thing turns out for him, all right? Before we do, as always, please like, share, follow, comment, and subscribe to TAP, the Art of Political Discourse. We appreciate you very much. Without further ado, let's get it. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Secretary General, thank you for being here. Secretary, I want you to provide some reassurance for my constituents. In 2019, the DIA published that Iran, quote, had swarms of small boats, large inventory of naval mines, and arsenal of anti-ship missiles that can severely disrupt maritime traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. In 2025, after Operation Midnight Hammer, a Brookings expert said, quote, "It is wrong to conclude Iran is now a defeated nation and will act accordingly. Iran's demonstrated destructive missile capabilities have penetrated nearly every part of Israel."
So just for context, yeah, this is regarding what's taking place in the Strait of Hormuz. So before this thing with Trump and Israel, attacking Iran, the Strait of Hormuz was wide open to everybody. There was no toll. There were no attacks on ships coming or going. It was a free and open waterway. It wasn't until after the Trump administration and Israel attacked Iran, and Iran began to use the Strait of Hormuz as a trump card. Excuse the pun, but that's what they did. That's what they've done. That is what they're doing. And for whatever reason, in spite of Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump's accusations or claims that Iran has been totally annihilated and defeated, America has won the war, Iran shows otherwise. And the United States for sure is not going inside the Strait of Hormuz with those naval ships. I wonder why. If the country's defeated, then why not? Why not? If you're claiming victory, why wouldn't you put them ships inside that strait to make sure that no other ships are molested or harassed by Iran? If they're defeated, missile capabilities are gone, Navy is gone, Air Force is gone, drones all used up. Why not? Why not? We see a different story, though. We see that Iran is still up and running. Iran is still defending itself in spite of all the things we've told in terms of Iran being decimated and their war assets have been obliterated. We see the contrary of that, the opposite, the total opposite of that. So, yeah, this is what this is about. How is all that possible? How did, you guys get to the conclusion that there was a victory, United States that won the war, and Iran was no longer viable or a threat? Yet they've closed the Strait of Hormuz, and as a result, they have affected the world's economy. So this is that, this is the context of this questioning of these lines of questionings by the Appropriations Committee in the Senate. Let's get to it.
Iran's arsenal could endanger American forces in the Gulf. And Senator Collins asked General Kane about the extent to which you were briefed and the president was briefed about the very likely outcome of this kinetic engagement. And there are some data points that seem to indicate that we did not see all of this coming, or that we didn't account for it. We may have been briefed on it, but we didn't account for it. Parts of the THAAD and Patriot systems in South Korea were moved to the Middle East. This is after the war. After the war, munitions were moved from around the world to defend U.S. sites in the region. There was a rush. There was a rush to evacuate United States personnel.
Right.
And Iran struck more than 200 structures and equipment at 16 U.S. sites. So, Secretary, can you just reassure us that this was all foreseen and part of the plan, or can you tell us whether there were any surprises here?
Well, thank you for the question, Senator. I can reassure you that it was all accounted for. Every aspect of this was poured over by the Joint Staff, by civilian leadership, and represented in pursuit of a very clear goal. And the chairman laid out correctly what the metrics militarily were from the beginning, whether it's ballistic missiles, Iran's Navy. You can't contest a blockade if you don't have a conventional Navy, destroying the defense industrial base. But it was all in service of ensuring Iran never has a nuclear weapon.
So as a for example,
I mean, that was, so I want you to know, it was all seen through the lens of preventing Iran from having.
I understand that's the underlying objective, and I do not dispute the military success. I don't think there's any doubt that when the most powerful, most well-funded, most technologically advanced, most disciplined, most trained military in human history sets out to do something, they almost always accomplish it. And so that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just wondering why we're moving THAAD assets from South Korea after the war started. I'm just wondering why there was a scramble to evacuate personnel. And I'm wondering why the President of the United States, our Commander-in-Chief, said that he was shocked that Iran would retaliate by striking other countries in the region. This was not just foreseeable, it was foreseen. It was, you don't need to get into a skiff to understand that their likely play was to asymmetrically retaliate and then to close the strait. And then it happened, and the president said, gosh, who could have seen this coming? I'm just trying to figure out, for those of us on the left and the right who are wary of regime change wars, who are wary of happy talk, who have learned through terrible experience the cost of this kind of adventurism. Why is this any different, and why didn't we see this coming?
Not only that, but why would they even partake in another war in the Middle East based upon the information coming from Benjamin Netanyahu? Hadn't he started enough wars and gotten enough American soldiers killed as a result of his Iraq war? It makes you wonder, and again, for whatever reason, the thought is that they believe most of what Israel said in terms of Iran's immediate defeat. It didn't play out like that. And this is the shock. This is Trump saying, who could have thunk this? I'm surprised that they're more resilient than the United States presidency or administration and military were told. They're way tougher than what Benjamin and the Israeli regime, the occupiers of Palestine, told them way more. So, Yeah, he was shocked, surprised, and I'm pretty sure Pete Hegseth was as well. They're still trying to figure it out because they never had a plan to begin with. They thought, okay, we shoot some of these missiles up in there, we unload, a lot of this weaponry, get rid of it and get some new stuff. We're gonna get, a $1.5 trillion spending budget for the Pentagon. So yeah, come on, let's make use of this stuff. But they didn't foresee the resilience of the Iranian government and people, for that matter, in terms of that bombardment, Epic Fury, and the other one that Israel calls its attack. But here Iran is still standing. Government is in place in spite of those many who've been killed by bombs. Iran's still standing, and they have a chokehold on the Strait of Hormuz. Who could have seen this coming? I'm not even in politics like that, or even the military, but I could tell you what, looking at that map, that's a rough, that'd be hard to get that. You're so exposed,
I appreciate your lauding of the force up front, and earnestly, that it's the greatest fighting force on planet Earth. But that was the same fighting force that surrendered to Iranian fast boats under the Biden administration. We all remember the pictures. Remember the Americans with their hands above their head at gunpoint to the Iranians? It's because they didn't have leadership like President Trump, who empowered them to do what was necessary. The Biden administration allowed them to pursue nuclear ambitions, didn't do anything about it. President Trump stepped in. We factored all the risk and ranges of options, put in maximum defensive capability for our troops as we could in real time, empowering the CENTCOM commander with everything he needed to ensure this mission could be as successful as possible, knowing there are branches and sequels of every operation that have to be accounted for.
I'm going to
factor the Navy. You might wonder, why would you sink the Navy if you're trying to prevent a nuclear Iran? There's reasons for that, because you're planning for contingencies in other ways that this could go as well.
Secretary, I'm trying to stay on time here. I hear what you're saying. I just don't hear an answer to the question of why we had to take certain actions that could have been taken before the kinetic engagement and would have kept our assets and our personnel more safe and would have looked and actually been more planful, more thoughtful, more well executed. Why are we doing all of this stuff as if it's a scramble if all of this stuff was foreseen?
I think I'm quite confident, along with the CENTCOM commanders, that we took every action possible to ensure that we were prepared for this conflict.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. Obviously not, though. We're looking at a situation where, again, Iran, yeah, man, they've been bombarded. Everyone would have to admit to that, all right? But they don't seem deterred. They don't seem to be whooped, or even in the frame of mind that they've lost a war. That's the impression a lot of us have. And it is carried by the fact that they control the Strait of Hormuz. How is that possible? The greatest military in the world, in history, so technologically advanced and so well disciplined, and yet they can't take the Strait of Hormuz. Not only that, but they're more than reluctant. I think that, I had to search my dictionary for a term to use here, but they're not in no hurry to put any boots on the ground. Why? You've defeated them. They don't have nuclear weapons. What's holding you back? So there's a lot that they didn't see coming. There's a lot that they did not plan for. And the evidence in that is the fact that the Strait of Hormuz is not in control of the greatest military in the world. So, Pete Hegseth, are you qualified? And should we take you as a credible individual? Are you telling the truth? What you're saying even credible? From this standpoint, not at all. On both counts, okay? He's not qualified and he's not credible. All right? A lot of word salad there, but He's not credible. And again, from the outside looking in, a victory means, a win means you are running things. You are in control. You've done the dang thing, and the loser knows it, right? That there's a receipt. There's no receipt here. And the loser does not know that it's lost the war, or that they've lost the war. There's no signs of it. There are no signs of it whatsoever. Okay, so give us your thoughts in the comments, all right? Let us know what you think. Do you agree with Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump, their assessment of this war with Iran? Also, what about the Strait of Hormuz? If the United States obliterated and decimated all the military assets of Iran, why do they not control the Strait of Hormuz? And one further, why haven't they put any boots on the ground? Let us know what you think, okay? Until next time, take care of yourselves and one another.
You can murder a liberator, but you can't murder liberation. You can murder a revolutionary, but you can't murder revolution. And you can murder a freedom fighter, but you can't murder